brand new FCX24 Pro, and this thing's got a set of features on it that have never been available on an RTR before. FMS has created some new body colors for this anniversary edition truck, but it's what's under the body that really matters. Before we look under the body, let's take a look at the body itself. They call this a 1/24th scale truck, but this is not a 1/24th scale truck. This is a 1/24th scale truck, and as you can see, it is way smaller than the FCX24 Blazer. As a matter of fact, I took some measurements on this Blazer and compared it to a full-size Blazer, and this is more like 1/19th scale, so I think it would be safe to call this a 1/18th scale truck. We've got some really nice realistic details on this truck, including lights, hard bumpers, mirrors, working lights in the front, which we'll take a look at in just a little bit, and some nice chrome wheels. This body's fairly easy to take off, though it's a little bit tricky if you're not used to it. There's just 2 tabs in the front and 2 tabs in the back. With that off, you can take the cable off the receiver, and we can see this is a hard plastic body, but it does not have an interior. The really exciting stuff's in here, though. As you can see, we've got an Outrunner brushless motor here, a brushless ESC to go along with that, and a separate receiver. This receiver looks exactly like the Ant receivers that I use on my FlySky remote. I'm curious to see if it'll bind with that FlySky. They've also made quite a few changes to the drivetrain to accommodate the increased power of this brushless motor. Let's dig in and see what's different. First of all, we'll get one of these wheels off of here. We've got a plastic wheel hex here, and these wheels are true bead locks. They are Cooper Discover or STT Pros, and they are nice, soft, sticky tires that are great for light rock crawling and general bashing. And speaking of bashing, I get the feeling this brushless motor combined with a 2-speed transmission is going to make this the best micro basher you can get. While I'm pulling the rest of these wheels off is a great time to get subscribed. We've got some really awesome teardowns coming up, and I've got an ultimate build plan for a vehicle you've never seen on this channel before. And now that we've got those wheels off, we can see the first major upgrade to this, and that's going to be these shocks. The standard K5 Blazer has plastic body shocks, but these are metal-bodied, threaded, fluid-filled shocks. These spring perches are also metal, and pulling the shock cap off, we can see we've got a pretty standard looking bladder style shock in here with a fairly rudimentary piston, but that should be just fine for one of these little trail trucks. You don't really need sophisticated damping, you just need some damping. When you work on these, you're gonna notice there are a ton of really tiny parts on them that are very easy to lose. These little baggies are great for storing these parts, not only for this car, but for any RC car you're working on. You can put various parts in one of these bags, then label it where it came from, and especially if you're working on something longer term, it can make reassembly much, much easier and makes these parts a lot harder to lose. Now, speaking of parts, it looks like this actually comes with a kit to swap out this rear cap for a light bar and roll bar, turning this thing into kind of a pickup truck. We'll take a look at that conversion in a little while. Most of the screws on this are going to be 1.5mm hex screws. You definitely want to make sure you have a good tool for working on these. These MIP bits are excellent, though they are a little bit expensive. As we dig deeper into this, you can see this is a Y-link suspension. This differs from a true 4-link suspension design because this top link is just one wishbone style link as opposed to 2 separate links. In a full-size vehicle, a 4-link suspension design is superior because it creates better articulation with less binding, but in a little vehicle like this, it's probably not going to make much difference. And the Y-link design is probably just for ease of manufacturing and reduced cost. As you can see, we've got a portal axle design here, and according to FMS, there's definitely some improvements to this portal axle, which is good because I suspect that brushless motor is probably going to have quite a bit more torque than the brushed motor that it replaces, and I'm hoping it creates the most versatile little basher crawler you can get. If you're not familiar with a portal axle design, it moves the axles that the wheels are attached to from in line with the differential to lower than the differential, effectively raising the differential itself and giving you that increased ground clearance. Now pulling this off, we can see we have steel gears in here. These are sintered steel. That's the same as on the original K5. However, what's different is we have ball bearings in here instead of bushings. That's a nice upgrade. Pulling these out, it looks like we have the same steel axles as on the non-pro version. Now make sure you stay tuned because if these upgraded components survive the stock 2S system, I've got something special for this truck that you're not going to want to miss. All right, I'm going to switch to power tools. I don't recommend you do this unless you're really comfortable with what you're doing because it's really easy to strip these screws out. Now, the reason we took those out is because underneath this cover is another major difference between this and the regular FCX24. This has the same style of differential as the stock FCX24, but the stock FCX24 has a plastic ring and pinion, while this is a steel ring and pinion. That's a pretty good upgrade, and probably necessary for the added power of that brushless system. Let me get this put back together and I'll show you what else they added to handle that power. One of the nice things about this design is, even though a lot of these parts are really, really small, most everything is the same side to side, and it can only really go together one way. Plus, most of these screws are the same size, so you don't have to keep track of a million different sizes of screws. I will say, especially for as small as this is, this gear system feels really, really smooth. Driving those axles are going to be the same plastic drive shafts that we previously saw. Hopefully these are going to be strong enough for that stock brushless power, and maybe even for something a little bit special. Powering all of that is this stock 380 milliamp hour 2S battery, and that's going to be sending power to this 2-speed transmission. Let's take a closer look at that because there's supposed to be some upgrades in there as well. This brushless motor uses a fairly standard JST connector that you see with a lot of brushless crawler setups. Now we've got an interesting clip-in cover here, and that's also the tray for the receiver. We'll take a closer look at this receiver in a little bit and see if it is actually compatible with a FlySky transmitter. And that gives us our first close look at this Outrunner motor. This is a 1212 3200 kV motor, and it looks pretty nice. I really do like the fact that they have an integrated cover for it. It's not going to stop sand and whatnot from getting in here, but should prevent big chunks of debris from binding it up. Removal of this transmission is pretty straightforward. We just got 4 screws here on the bottom, and then the transmission lifts straight out the top. We need to be careful with this shift linkage and get it disconnected while we remove it. And now we can get a closer look at this Outrunner motor. I think this looks pretty sweet. I like this dark chrome look. Let's see what it's attached to inside. And again, all these screws are the same size, which makes things really convenient. All right, so taking this cover off reveals a brass pinion and a plastic spur gear, which is the same as we had on the brushed version. However, removing the back cover, we can see that all these gears in here have been upgraded to steel. We do still have a plastic shift fork in here, but we also have all ball bearings as well. This is definitely a good upgrade and should hopefully handle that extra power. Now, will this be able to handle 3S power? That's something we're just gonna have to wait and see. I notice here it says the ESC is IPX4 water resistant. The receiver also says it's IPX4 water resistant. I'm curious to see if this servo is though. Let's take a closer look at that. As you can see, we've got an integrated servo saver here, and this is a brass geared servo. I'm pretty sure the stock servo was actually plastic geared, so I believe that's an upgrade. Let's see if we can sneak this out of here and take a look at it. So these teeny tiny screws don't have O-rings on them. And in pulling this apart, I can see there's no sort of gasket there. And we also don't have an O-ring up here, so technically this is not going to be water resistant. However, pretty much all servos are at least somewhat water resistant, just by the nature of how close everything fits together. So I'm sure for just general splashing around, this thing's gonna be just fine. However, if you wanted to waterproof this more, you could pull the board out, conformally coat it, or even run some sealant around the outside of these cases. I'm not gonna do that though, because I wanna test it as it comes. All right, we just need to get this axle put in, then we'll see how these new electronics work. I will just get this 380 milliamp hour battery put in. They do also include a charger with this, though I'm a little concerned because this charger charges at 1 amp, which is almost 3C for this little battery, or 3 times the capacity. Generally, I like to charge these batteries at 1C or 1 times their capacity, which is why I definitely recommend getting a better charger than these little USB ones. That way you can control just how fast you're charging the battery. All right, guys, before we take this out bashing, let's see just how controllable this is. How slow can this new system go? We're gonna switch into low gear on the remote, and here we go. All right, guys, believe it or not, that's actually moving. That is so slow. Now, I wanna see if this has the same FOC style control as other brushless crawlers, where you can just hold the throttle in one position, and it'll increase the power to get up over any obstacle. I'm not increasing the throttle at all, and as you can see, it's just crawling right up over that obstacle. So yes, this does seem to have that FOC control. Now let's put this thing in high gear and see just how fast it is. It's not very fast, but it is just a little crawler. That is not too bad though. I think we've got a top speed. Let's bring it in. Oh, all right, 5 miles an hour. That'll work for trail riding. Let's see how she bashes. Well, this thing's pretty fun on 2S and actually very controllable with the stock power system. The metal oil-filled shocks make it very composed over rough terrain, but we don't leave well enough alone on this channel, so I picked up a Castle Sidewinder Nano 3S ESC and a little 3S battery. Let's make this thing more powerful. Overall, for general trail riding, I'm actually very impressed with this platform. I think this is probably the best RTR you can get right now for small-scale trail bashing. That being said, of course, more power is always a good thing, and I'm really curious to see how much faster we're going to be able to go than 5 miles an hour on 3S, and if this platform's going to be able to handle the additional speed. Now, this little ESC is very small, especially compared to the stock one, and I think we'll just double side tape it on top of the stock ESC for testing. One thing I'm looking forward to with this ESC is the programmability. A big problem I have with this stock ESC is that the drag brake doesn't seem to be adjustable on it. The manual does state that these little dip switches are designed for setting ESC functions, but from what I could see, the manual doesn't say what those functions are, and I tried every combination I could on the transmitter itself, and it did not seem to affect the drag brake, so I believe this has full drag brake all the time. That's fine for crawling, but for general trail bashing, it can make control a little bit challenging. This ESC should be pretty easy to retrofit. Fortunately, it uses the same connection for the motor, so we can just unplug the old one, plug in the new one. We may have to change the motor direction in the programming, and then we just need to plug it into the receiver. I did test this receiver out with my FlySky transmitter, and unfortunately it didn't seem to work. Even though this receiver looks identical to the receivers I normally use, apparently it's using a different protocol. Now, before we tidy up this wiring, let's make sure this will actually work. I've got this 3S battery here, which will just barely jam in where the other battery was. I'll go ahead and plug this in, and let's see if this will move. Okay, it's definitely fast. Let's see how it is in low gear. So we're definitely going to be losing some of that really fine FOC control, but this thing should definitely be a lot faster. While we're waiting for that battery to charge up, let's go ahead and convert this body. All right, 4 little screws and the rear cap comes off, and then we just need to install the roll bar. And there we go. I think that looks really cool. I'm going to leave this light bar off because I'm pretty sure it'll just get ripped off with what we're about to do. Speaking of which, let's go see what this platform's really capable of. All right, 3S power. Let's see if she's got more pep. Oh yeah, definitely faster. Not super easy to control. Full throttle. One more pass. Oh. All right, let's see how fast that is. All right, 8 miles an hour. That's quite a bit faster than it was on 2S. Let's see how she bashes. Guys, this is one of those rare instances where I can confidently say more power is not more better. Whereas running this on 3S was a lot of fun, it's also pretty challenging and not really necessary. This thing spent more time on its back than it did on its wheels. And overall, again, while it's fun, I definitely would not recommend it. The stock system in this thing is plenty powerful enough. 5 miles an hour is fast enough for pretty much whatever you're gonna wanna do with it, and it handles slow speed much, much better. That being said, one of the main reasons I did that was to test this drivetrain, and it handled it like a champ. I had no issues with it whatsoever, which means that with the stock power system, you're probably not ever gonna have any problems with it. Which is good, because whereas I think this is currently the best small trail basher, light rock crawler you can buy, places to get parts for it are gonna be more limited than cars from companies like Traxxas. That being said, FMS is usually pretty good with their parts availability. I've never had any problems with any of their other vehicles. The brushless system in this thing makes it an absolute beast. The 2-speed transmission makes it super versatile. The oil-filled shocks make it handle off-road terrain surprisingly well, and it definitely bashes bigger than its size. Overall, I think this is a great little truck. At $200, it's pretty expensive, but it already comes brushless, so you're not gonna be worrying about upgrading it down the road. Everything seems really, really tough on it, so you can just take this out of the box and go have fun with it. Keeping that in mind, I think $200 is a pretty fair price, and like I said, I think this is currently the best small-scale trail basher you can buy. Thanks so much for joining me on this adventure. Why don't you join me on one of these adventures?